Greetings, Thokozani Makosa Makolo. Thank you so much for joining us. It is wonderful to be on another episode of Roots of Wisdom, the podcast that is dedicated to restoring the sacred role of eldership in our modern world. Now, today I'm so excited to have this guest, Baba Buntu, who's been walking with me for a couple of years and shared quite a lot of wisdom. It's wonderful to walk with elders who are so deeply rooted with integrity, with the vision, with clarity. So it's been wonderful just to be held in his arms. And as per usual, I like to hand it over to you, Baba, to introduce yourself instead of me talking about you. I always feel there's power when the elder just steps into the room and announces themselves. So
Thokozani, greetings, blessings to everyone in the world who's tuning into this, and also to you, Nkulu Lita. Thank you so much for setting up this space. Putting me right on the spot, I think I would have to start by giving thanks to the ancestors who have brought me into this world and lineage that I come from, and maybe to mention my parents, Lerumo Oliver and Winifred Kati, and my grandparents, Christopher and Onassis Kati. And also, I want to call out a matriarch that is very significant in our family, who we refer to as Mama Kaka. These are my people, and I think I walk with many ancestral spirits in this world, but these are the closest one. And maybe also to introduce myself by name, I am mostly referred to as Dr. Baba Buntu. Baba not being my given name, but more of I would say a title or a way to refer my role. I walk with a purpose of fathering in this world. Obviously not to everyone, but with the father spirit in a community where many of our fathers have not been present, or where many father spirits have been crushed and broken. So that means different things in different relations, but to many young people, I have a father figure role. And my full name is Amani, which means peace, Olubanjo, which means God is dancing with me. And I represent Buntu, the life's essence that connects the universe and the interconnectedness of all its aspects. So I guess that's my introduction.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much. I love that, the ideology of fathering in a fatherless, world. I know lots of people grew up without their parents, rather the father figure. Could you just dive into a little bit of the work that you do with regards to that?
Okay, so I'm based in South Africa, close to Johannesburg, where I live with my wife, Mama Tebogo Buntu, who I have a lot of gratitude towards as a kindred spirit and a day-to-day partner in both work and family. And I'm saying it this way because I don't take this relationship for granted. I know that within the space of elderhood, within the space of spiritual practice, within the space of African community leadership, we don't always see so many great role models of families and couples and unions. And I've been very fortunate to be given one which I walk with the greatest sense of humility, humbleness, and gratitude. Together with Mama Tebogo and also some of our spiritual sons and daughters, we have started a company in 2002 called Ebukosini Solutions. And company is maybe just a reference. It's more of, I think it starts with being a home. We have opened up our home to walk with many souls that have been quite bewildered in this world. And that's something that also indicates part of what my journey has been at an earlier stage. Quite bewildered, having a lot of questions, having very few anchor points that grounds me, having very few people who I felt could understand me and guide me, and very humbled that through my journey, I have come to a place where I can present that grounded space for many other and often younger souls who are bewildered and have many questions in this world. So through Ebukusini as a home and also a place of practice, we do a number of programs. We work with men, we work with women, work with youth. And within that work, I think we are a company centered around learning and education. And a central focus in what we want to teach is African wisdom, using African science, using African healing, using African meaningfulness, written text, interpreted text, and practice to find solutions to the many challenges we face as African people. And we want to draw specifically and solely from African solutions as a way to also counter the very aggressive westernization and Europeanness that we are all forced to learn and often include within our personality and practice as well. So we are an organization that is both fighting and healing at the same time. I think that's the best way to put it. We are fighting the ignorance and arrogance that we are often faced with as Africans in this world, but we are also healing through the wisdom and the methodologies that our ancestors have downloaded to us.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. It's really important work, really, really important work. And so I guess one of the main questions that I'd like to ask you is what have you seen over the years in doing this work that you've done, that you've dedicated your life to? What are some of the patterns that have shown up for you? What are some of the things that you've mined over the years?
Oh, I think I'm not sure if I have a short question, short answer to that question. Something that just comes to mind as you are articulating the question is that, I'm thinking a lot about how fearful we as African people seem to be of our power, because very often we are so close to building it, rephrasing it, reframing it, recollecting it. And then we do something almost by automatically to kind of not really hit the target or delay the victory, I feel. And I think I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I think as much, and I'm talking now within those of us within the global African community who have read, who have studied, who have walked an intentional journey to know ourselves better and understand our purpose better. I think even within us, there is a strain of fear. Because what if we are as powerful as our history shows? What if we really are as powerful as our ancestors are continuously trying to tell us? Then there's a whole lot of things within this reality that we have now gotten used to that will not continue to be like that. And I think that to sit with that and to start waking up and conducting your day with that as your main knowledge, it's quite scary to us because we are so used to our marginalization. We are so used to our otherness. We are so used to not really count that much that to a certain extent, we have also started to treat ourselves as a people that don't really matter that much. I'm not saying this is the only lesson, but it's one that I really felt compelled to share right now. I think maybe if I should mention one more, I think I have also continuously seen how I feel not everywhere, but in some pockets and quite a number of pockets within our communities, we don't create intentional spaces for young people to really nourish them. Yes, we might have a youth club in the corner, we might have some music there, we might have a radio station, but not really an intentional grounding space for young people where they can fully be in a process of learning, being guided, being held, being supported, and not just criticized, not just misunderstood, not just told what to do, but be allowed to unfold and to expand and to become. And that's something that I've walked with as a concern since I was a youth myself. I remember being young and writing even letters to my adult self saying, don't you dare to forget how difficult it is to be young and Black in this world, even within our communities. So it's something that I've held very dear to my heart. And I try to honor as much as I can to see young people, spend time with young people, be inspired by young people, and do things that are meaningful to our youth.
Thank you so much. There's a lot that you've got stated there, but one of the main things that really stuck out is the ideology of the power that we have and the powers that the ancestors have spoken within us. I'm curious to know what is that? For someone that is clueless around, the ideology of the power of the ancestors, or the power that we have within ourselves that has never explored that, how does that show up and what does it look like?
I think it starts with understanding the African cosmos or the broader world in which we as human beings represent a part of the full reality, not all of it. We represent channels, we represent significant moving blocks. But until we know how to connect with the other aspects of universe forces, meaning our spirituality, our traditions, our rituals, our ancestors, we will fail to really act and practice our power. And when I say power, I think let me exemplify power as self-determination, being a people who are determined to do what is meaningful for us as human beings. And I like to always say this thing: think about how many generations you would have to travel back in your own lineage to find the first free African. And when I say that, people are often quite puzzled, like, yeah, that's actually a deep question. How far would I have to travel to really get in touch with the first free person in my lineage? And I'm saying it that way because I want to remind us that self-determination and freedom hasn't been our reality for quite a long while. So it's not so strange that we are confused. It's not so strange that we experience our powerlessness more than anything else. It is also a reminder that something happened to us. We are not innately like that, but something happened to us. And now it's our task to explore, connect, and engage with the vast universe of power that we have available to us through what I mentioned, our spirituality, our ancestral world. And I want to also add, because we have also become a people who may not really stand on the shoulders of our own history at times, because we go to schools, we go to learning spaces, and we don't necessarily learn so much about us. And when you start to study the history of us as a people, and when you start to embody and internalize what that means, you stand in a completely different way. Yes, the world is kind of similar, but your purpose in this world completely changes. What you can do and what is possible for you to do as an African collective force of people changes. And I think this is what our ancestors are also very impatient for us to get to. They want us to get to a place where we can see, yes, we have been marginalized, we have been disempowered, we have been stolen from, we have been extremely disrespected and violated. But there's something that happens with us when we reclaim that power in the way that we're supposed to, that also positions us differently in terms of what we want to achieve and how we walk forward towards our own victories.
That's powerful, Baba. Thank you. What is the Africa that you envision?
What is the Africa that I envision?
Mm.
I think there are layers to my vision, and I'm saying it that way because I'm very aware that in my lifetime, I will see a few movements, hopefully in the right direction towards that. And I feel I've already been able to see that. But I also understand that this is a generational project. I think one of the first things I want to see more of for us as Africans is us understanding and knowing our history and what we have been asked to bring into this world and represent. We are the first people of humanity, and we are the first people of civilization, of building, of developing. And that does not necessarily make us more significant than other people, but it makes us significant yet the same, in the sense that we sit with certain keys to human lives that can only really be placed in this world when we are playing the role that we're supposed to. We have now gotten used to be at the bottom of the barrel in many ways. This is not our position. This is not where we are supposed to be, but this is where history and politics and many dynamics have placed us. But we still sit with access to certain keys, strategies, solutions that this world needs. And I think the first thing we need to collectively agree on is that we need to reclaim that for ourselves first. We cannot do this for everybody at the same time. And I think this is maybe where we struggle a little bit with what African humanity is supposed to be, because African humanity is often present as a very borderless, open, all-encompassing gift to the whole world. And I believe it is that in its full essence. But when we think about it as a process of regaining, reinterpreting, re-understanding something that has so brutally been taken away from us, it also means that we need to not work for everybody at the same time. We need to first also recover. We need to mend. We need to heal. We need to re-empower us. And that will take a little bit of time. And when we then reach a certain level of that, we will be able to regain the powers and the strength to also look after others and look after other dynamics in this world. But I'm really passionate about us being, I know people would say selfish, but I think it's about being purpose filled, looking at us and our recovery first.
That's beautiful. Are there any kind of systems and structures that would be able to help to hold that vision in any way from your perspective? What are the pieces that would need to be in place?
I think that's exactly what comes as a result of us healing and mending and recovering. Because I think, and I want to say this very clearly, that for me, the disconnect with African culture and African spirituality should not only be looked at as something we need to go back to reconnect with. Yes, to some extent, we need to reconnect and look back. We need to remember. We need to understand why certain things were done. We need to sit with our grandparents. We need to sit with our elders. We need to interpret some of the scripts so that we understand why certain things were done. But we are not positioned as a static people. So we are supposed to also embody the greatness of our knowledge and power so that we can reinterpret what we know and how that is supposed to be placed when times change. And times continue to change. We often think of our culture as something static. We need to get back to our culture. We need to do what we did 1,000 years ago. No, we're not supposed to. Yes, we should be aware what happened. We should understand that story, but we are supposed to embody it in such a way that we can make decisions and say we are now, based on what we see happening around us, we are using this element of our culture. We will not, for a while, we will actually pause this element and not use it so much because we understand that it's not so useful at this point. And that means that African culture is actually a continuum. So when you ask, are there systems that I think when we can catch up, when we can recover and understand what we are standing on, we are then also equipped to bring into existence something that we may not even have seen at this point, something that we can't even sit on this side of that solution and say, this is the definition, this is the phase 1, 2, and 3. It develops into that when we have reached a certain level of intuitive and experiential knowledge about who we were, why we are at this point, and what we are now supposed to do. So, and I know that some people feel a bit, but what is that? What are we supposed to look forward to then? I think that the future lies in the practice of what we are doing minute by minute, day by day, year by year. We are supposed to evolve, but because so many of us are struggling just to exist, just to have food on the table, just to go around just to survive for a day, obviously then it's difficult to really rise out into the highest sense of our power. So I think as we do this recovery work, we also need to grapple with the day-to-day elements of finance, of shelter, of clothing, of education, of raising children. There's many things that have become so burdensome in this world, especially under a capitalist doctrine, that keeps us often away and makes it quite difficult for us to do the spiritual, cultural work. But I see it happening. It's happening slow. It's happening slowly. Might take time, but it is happening. And I think if we are able to take a few steps back and really look at us as a people, because I think we have a tendency to recollect and put emphasis on the many negative aspects and the things that are not working. But I see a lot of things that are working and that are becoming better. And that gives me hope for now and for the future.
You mentioned the word elder. And of course, the main objective of this space is to how do we reclaim, the powerful role of the elder? So a couple of questions around that. The first one is, what is your definition of an elder and how does one become an elder?
Yeah. I- so I'm a firm believer that, like, if I referenced what I just mentioned now, that African culture is not static and that it has the dynamism of being reinterpreted and fitting slightly differently into different time epochs and needs. I also think elderhood moves with dynamics of change of time and change of space and change of dynamics. So, for instance, I know that many of us may be used to think of elderhood as a certain age. And I, to some extent, believe that age is important, mostly because of life experience. But then we also know that we have people who are old in age, but very immature in action and behavior and thought. So that does not necessarily include them in elderhood, even if they are of a certain age. We also know that not everyone has taken the opportunity or feel that they have had the opportunity to really reflect on their own life journey, their own life experiences in such a way that they can actually guide. So I think an elder is supposed to serve uplift, emancipate, and nourish the community. But that means that you need to also have walked an intentional journey to allow yourself to become somebody that we as a community can actually benefit from being around, listen to, be guided by. So I would say at this stage where so many of us are damaged by disconnect and confusion, not every elder, not every old person is an elder. I would say that. And I think in my own experience, I think what set me up to what the process of me understanding and accepting elderhood had a lot to do with initiations that I was, let me say, asked to do, even if it felt at the time as I was forced to do. I think, when we are not always willing to do what we are asked to do, it feels like a burden. It feels like it's taking us away from what we want to do in life. But when we trust spirit and we understand that we are here for a particular purpose, accepting your calling also becomes a very beautiful outcome. I would say that I've gone through several initiations: initiation of being, initiation of consciousness, initiation of spiritual purpose, and initiation of practice. And this has taken place in different parts of the world, in different circumstances, with different people, with different communities. And it is maybe slightly different than how other people around me have been initiated. But it also has a lot to do with where I have been anchored spiritually and culturally. And I think what positions you then to be a mentor and be somebody who's useful to the community is one, your own intentionality to walk with wisdom and practice. And also, if your community has seen you as somebody that they trust, not just somebody that is popular, because I think we mix those things. We look up to popular people. We look up to people who seem to have power, they have money, they have political influence. But I'm talking about people we trust. And that might be a different definition. People that the community trust to actually guide our children, our youth, our families. And that's not always easy when we are also very defragmented communities. We don't even if we are supposed to operate in the seamless interwovenness of villages, but many of us do not live that reality right now. So we look up to people because they have a car. We look up to people because they live in a certain neighborhood. We look up to people because they've been asked to serve on political committees. And that's not necessarily the people we are then engaging with because we trust them. So I think trust is very important. You should not just come out and call yourself an elder. The community need to let you know that we are inviting you to this position.
I love that. Thank you. Invitation from the community. A lot of what you shared, it really deals with the initiations. And so the common question has always been, are there rites of passages? Are there initiations that one undergoes? Are there processes that one must take before they become an elder?
I think yes. And I think we need to also look at where we are as a people now. We live in a time where a number of our cultural systems are alive. They might be dented and challenged, but they are alive. Another good batch of our cultural system are broken or have been misinterpreted and may not function in the way that they should. So it also depends a bit on where you live, who and what you have access to. So I think the answer to what you ask there differs a bit from person to person, community to community. I have so my family's from the Caribbean. I have come to my young years were spent in Europe, and then I came to Azania, South Africa, as a late 20, early 30-year-old. So all those three places have had their own brokenness, but also their own journeys that were presented to me that when I look back, I clearly see that they were initiation journeys. Even if they were not, all of them at least, were not necessarily presented the way we often think of initiation, that there's a council of people who call you and guide you and you do ABC and there's like a whole rhythm to things. I think mine was a bit more a result of the chaos that we live with as African people in different parts of the world. But in that, and I think this is why I have come to understand our ancestors as incredibly powerful. Even in those spaces and those trajectories where it seems like our culture doesn't even exist, it doesn't work, it's completely absent, there's a stream of spirit there. There's a stream of African ancestry. There's a stream of guidance. You just need to know how to tap into it. And I think I knew how to tap into it both because from a very young age, I started to listen to an inner voice. And secondly, I was on the outlook for my ears were very attuned to people and voices that resonated in a way that started to vibrate within. So there were certain people I was attracted to, there were certain books I was attracted to, there were certain spaces I was seeking. And in those spaces and in those voices and in those people, I found pieces and aspects which led to these journeys.
That's beautiful, Baba. Thank you so much. And I guess another main thing is the relationship dynamic between, because you mentioned that you are a Baba, a father. Have you found that the relationship dynamic between the elders and the younger generation is alive, I guess? Do you find that it's easy for young people to actually tap into elders, or is there a disconnect between elders and young people?
I think there's a huge disconnect between many, if not most, elders and many, if not most, young people. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But I think largely a lot of young people feel that they cannot approach us as elders. And I think many of us as elders we are a bit confused by the expression of youth because it's different to when we were young people. To some extent, as it should, because we're not supposed to just be exactly the same for generations. But I think also because young people today grow up under slightly different circumstances than to what we did when we were young. And because we may not have taken the time to try to understand how this world is perceived from a young perspective, we often come in with a judgmental and critical response to how young people behave. And I want to always say this. I feel that young people, to us as elders, young people, we should look at young people as a mirror. Even when we don't understand and agree with how young people express themselves, they are saying something about us. And we very often arrogantly say that, no, they are wrong. They should do. They are not. Like we have a lot of expectations to them. But I feel that youth as a segment of society is saying to us, can you just take an interest in listening to me? I may not be able to express myself exactly the way you like me to express myself, but I do have a message. I know something about this world. I have some questions, and I will ask those questions once you show me that you are authentically interested in knowing me. And I think a lot of young people don't feel that we are really interested in knowing them on their terms. So I wish us to be much better in that. Much, much, much better.
And as an elder, I've always wondered, what are some of the challenges that you face and have had to overcome over the years? What are the challenges of being an elder?
The challenges of being an elder. I think, I'm not sure if this is just about being an elder or being me as a person, but I think I struggle a lot with when can I reach a point where I feel I've done enough? Not to stop doing anything, but at what point can I say I can rest? At what point can I say I can pause now? I must leave it to other energies and other moments to continue the work. I think I struggle with that, both as a person and as an elder. And as you would know, Lita, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but you also know that part of my elderhood is also that I impose myself to some extent. And I see that as a huge difference between me and a number of elders around me, that many elders wait to be approached and then they engage based on a question or based on somebody indicating something they'd like to have assistance with. I may take a little bit of time to come to you, but once I see an interest and once I see that is something that you're seeking, I invite myself, meaning that I'm picking up on an energy because I know from my own experiences of being young and also from consulting with so many young people and so many adults too in this world that if it's difficult for people to approach. It's difficult for people to be honest. It's difficult for people to say, I struggle with this. I don't know how I can change this. So when they ask one question, there's probably 10 other questions behind that. And I know that. So when within my spirit and within my energy, I feel that you're seeking something more, impose myself. I think that's maybe imposing is not the right term, but I think that's both how it feels and that's how I also do it, meaning that there's a hint of a brutal force and energy in that because my own experience of healing and improvement and transformation is that it doesn't just come in nice, lush, soft dynamics. It comes with a certain roughness. It comes with a certain confrontational energy, not to diminish, not to destroy, not to provoke and belittle, but to really zone in on this obstacle that is keeping you from being who you are supposed to be. And I want us to amass an energy to confront that, because I've seen the result of when we are able to confront it and lower its intensity, the beauty and the power and the strength that comes from that. So yeah, I think I've challenged a few people as an elder as well. So maybe that is part of my challenge, that I don't always know when to let go, or when to leave people also to do their own work in their own time.
And if you had to look back upon your life, is there anything that you would have done differently on your journey towards becoming an elder and as an elder right now?
I'm not sure if I would have done much differently, but I wish that I could have trusted what felt a bit insane at an earlier age. Meaning, because as a young person, I grew up in an environment where a lot of what I felt very strongly within me was right was not affirmed from the circumstances around me. I was made to feel that I was wrong, that I was making up things, that I was hallucinating, that I was just going in my own stubborn direction for no other reason than just to be difficult. And I wish that I could have known earlier that this was what I was supposed to do, and trusted it full-heartedly at an earlier stage. But maybe if I did that, maybe I'd become arrogant. Maybe I would have also, I think one thing that I've decided to carry with me is a very strong understanding that most of us as African people across the globe, we were not born into our fullness. So when I have been given the opportunity to walk a long journey to recover myself, I must not look back at somebody who's starting their journey with attitude and with arrogance, and say, why are you not doing this? Why don't you trust that? Why can't you do better? We have all been affected by colonialism, by westernization, by this cultural terrorism that has been forced upon us. So I don't want us to be arrogant when we see people at the very beginning.
Are there specific protocols or are there ways to approach an elder? I mean, for someone who's out there that's kind of seeking and doesn't want to mess up because that's not a relationship that they've had, how do I approach an elder, and what are the protocols that I need to follow in order to be respectful towards the elder?
So in my practice of being an elder, I think I have insisted on remembering how difficult it was for me to approach elders when I was young. And I'm trying to carry myself in reference to that, knowing that young people still find it difficult. So when we are culturally intact, when our culture works, when our societies and communities are attuned to our cultural respect, obviously there should be some protocols, there should be some ways of approaching an elder. There should be some ways that we also support our elders, make sure that they can continue to do what they do. It shouldn't just be an individual pursuit. But I'm very aware that we are not in a fully functional African cultural state. So I think with that in mind, it is not my job as an elder to insist on the protocol, because I'm part of the brokenness as much as you, if you are a young person who's trying to talk to me, is also part of that brokenness. So if you say, what's up, man? And I feel that, whoa, you can't just say, what's up, man? What are you talking about? It is also my job to understand that maybe from where you are coming, that was your attempt to say something cool and say something vibrational. And when all I can do is to say, what is wrong with you? You know, young people, you don't have respect. If that's all I can do, I'm also just crushing somebody who was actually making an attempt. So what I would want to do is to respond. I might not like it. I can feel that my ego and my spirit doesn't like that approach, but I will respond to it, and then I will create a space for us to sit down, and then I will, after we have done our openings and I can understand a little bit about who you are, then I can say, the way you approached me was a little bit, I wasn't so comfortable with that, and this is the reason why, and maybe next time then you could do it this way. So for me, it's more relational than just a static set of rules that you must do it this way, you must always talk like that. But I think then seeing it from my own expectation to me, when I approach somebody who is an elder to me, I think I have internalized a certain, yeah, you could call it a protocol. I would bring forward my intention, meaning in the form of a question after greeting and kind of creating a situation where I can sit down with this elder and then be clear about who I am. I would introduce myself, and then I would put forward a question saying that, I'm looking for some advice on certain questions, and you are somebody that I look up to. I wonder if I could come to you and we could sit down and have some conversations. Would that be okay? And in what way would it suit you that we do that? Now I'm leaving it in the hands of the elder to kind of inform me what is the accessibility, what is the expectation from their side. So I think maybe as a general, I think that would be an advice to also say, introduce yourself, say who you are, say a little bit about the family and the situations you come from, and then don't just start asking questions. Foreground your questions with an intention, saying that I've always wanted to talk to you and I have some question. Would it be possible for me to ask them now? Should we meet another time? So that you also don't, I think when I have seen this, elders who are respected and trusted often become a bit overwhelmed because we don't have so many. And a lot of people would then maybe want to come to that elder. And when you are approached, it can feel a bit brutal to say, whoa, don't talk to me now. You can't speak to me like this. So it's difficult to kind of, so I think you, as a person who's seeking mentorship and help, be clear about your intentions and ask for a permission.
We spoke a little bit earlier about the journey of becoming an elder. Perhaps you could just elaborate a little bit further more about what are the practical ways for those who are just starting the journey or seeking to start the journey or have walked the journey unknowingly. Could you just perhaps elaborate further on that?
No, great question, Lita. I think I'd already said that being an elder is partly walking an intentional journey, having some life experience and maybe some particular skills that you can offer in terms of a mentorship to people and community, but also that the community has pointed you as somebody they trust and that they look up to for the wisdom that you carry. I think if you are wondering if this is something that you are called to, if you are beginning to understand that this is something that you definitely are called to, what are some of the things that you should now be very aware of? I think for me, Lita, discipline is number one. Discipline and consistency. I'm saying this because we live within very fragmented realities where spiritual practice, healing, being somebody who has prophetic messages, being somebody who knows cultural wisdom very well, can easily become a performance. You talk about how families should be constituted. You talk about how women should be treated. You talk about how African culture is an education for our children. But when we come to your home, we see nothing of that. We look at your children and we see no embodiment of what you are talking about. Now, that's a discord. That's a problem. And what I'm trying to say here is not that we will come to you and look at your family, and if we see some discrepancies or see some problems, then it means that you're not a good elder. Of course, we come from problematic families. There can be a lot of discords within our own family structures as well. But I think the first thing we want to see is the discipline you have within yourself, your discipline of patience, your discipline of walking with the wisdom that you have been allowed and asked to carry, your discipline of practice, your discipline of finding a balance between what you need to share, but also when you need to listen. I think, some elders talk all the time, and I'm trying to not be one of them, although on these platforms, people see me talk a lot. But you'll be surprised when you're at my house and we have conversations with whoever is in the house. I often choose to be quiet. I often choose to not talk a lot. And I'm doing it because it's important for me to learn. It's important for me to see how things are now. I know how things were 30, 20, 10 years ago. I may not know exactly how it is to be younger at this particular age. And that means I need to listen. So discipline is very important for me. I think internalizing your purpose is also very important. I think the extent to which you can be a significant and meaningful elder is also directly linked to the extent to which you understand and accept and have experience walking with your purpose in this world. This world that cuts you, that puts you down, that confronts you, that makes you feel like you are not really that much special. And having experience walking with that is a huge asset to all of us because we all have insecurities in the way we walk in this world. And for me, of course, practice is very important. The information we want from elders should be practical. It should be implement. And for that, we need examples. We need to see examples of how that is done. We need to uh, we need to be told stories that can make us see how that is done. So I can see how I can do it because my situation might be different from another person. So how do I do what I'm being told? And I think the last point I want to mention is a balance between determination and defense, meaning obviously elders serve different roles and different specialities. So your speciality could be wisdom, your speciality could be a certain skill, it could be a certain life wisdom, it could be different things. So I want to see determination of that. I want you to be determined in what you are teaching and what you can let other people know. But I also want to see defense. And I'm saying this because I think a common thing, especially within circles of Black consciousness and Pan-Africanism, of which I have drawn immense power to find myself, to walk in this world and to find my energy. We find a tendency that when people get older, they sometimes, the fire is a little bit less, the confrontation is a little bit less. And I'm not saying we should always be confrontational. That's not my point. But when we look at where we are as a people, I also want elders who have a fire that is burning, an intentional fire that is about protecting us, that is about how should we walk in this world. Yes, we need to study our history. Yes, we need to understand our spirituality. Yes, we need to, but what are the skills of how to walk with all that knowledge in a world that constantly ambushes you, constantly criticizes you? You could actually lose your job and your income, your house and your livelihood from knowing it and talking about some of these things. What are the practical ways of walking with that? What are the practical ways of protecting the relationship? What are the practical ways of respecting woman, respecting man, nurturing the child in a world that presents itself as this one does? I'm a bit tired of those of us who say, yeah, you see, back in the day, we didn't have this. In Africa, we were all friends. We were all walking together. We were all... Okay, but what about now then? It's great to know that we had no problems back then, if that is the case. What do we do now when we have so many problems? And I think that's what I expect for elders to have some wisdom about. How do we deal with white supremacy? How do we deal with Eurocentric perspectives? How do we deal with corporate cultures, capitalist cultures, when to some degree we cannot completely walk outside of them? So how do we walk when we are inside of those rooms? How do we walk with our purpose and our spirit and our knowledge when we also are in very dangerous and vulnerable spaces? Being an elder is not for everyone. Like I said, I want the communities to also choose and invite elders that they trust.
Thank you so much for your time, Baba. And of course, one of my greatest privileges over the years is to just be prayed over by an elder. Is the words of an elder are very powerful and meaningful. So the invitation is, if you are open to it, to just share some words or pray us out as we move from this episode into the next.
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. I think I want us to center our spirit uh, and focus for a minute on our unity as African people. We function in this world that's very fragmented and disunited to quite a large degree, but we know that we are here for a particular purpose and a common purpose. I ask from our ancestors to guide us on a path of a much stronger and much more intentional unification of Africa's spirit, Africa's practice, Africa's wisdom, channeled through the children of the continent and its diaspora for the sole reason of bringing back what was lost, but also to bring into existence what must come. We are vessels, we are engines, we are spaces to be filled with information, with knowledge, but also with new possibilities. And we give thanks for the platform of connecting with and understanding more about eldership and elderhood to also serve us in our fight for justice, in our fight for liberation, in our fight for freedom, to stand as the majestic people we were created to be, to stand as the power engine of the world, to stand as the beacon of hope and as the frontier that secures life, that is not about harm, not about subjugation, not about discrimination, but all about bringing to its fullest form the human spirit, its practice, and its being. With those words, we call out to the ancestral world and our supreme being to guide, to teach, and to challenge us to do better. Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you so much, Baba. And looking forward to many other transmissions with you. I appreciate you, the work that you do.
Thank you.
So grateful. So grateful. Until next time. Thanks a lot.